What is good, everyone? This is your host, Deanna Kuempel with Label Free Podcast. To live your best life, you must live label free. We have a very special guest. She is zooming in all the way from Alberta, Canada. This is Miss Elizabeth from Smile Syndicate Music Hour Podcast. Did I say that correctly?
You got it right. I'm Miss Elizabeth.
Yes. All right. Miss Elizabeth or Liz, what can I call you as we get into our conversation?
Liz is my actual name. That's fine.
Awesome. Okay, Liz, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience and give them a little bit about your background and all these great things that you're doing with your podcast?
Sure. My name is Liz, and I do live in Alberta. For my show, though, we are basing ourselves in a fictional universe. So we do say that we're in Alberta, but we actually are living in Smilteton, Alberta. We say Smilteton, Alberta. There's no such thing as Smilteton. It's kind of this fantasy land where everybody is crazy. This is why I thought I fit on the Label Free podcast. We're a perfect match because in Smilteton, everybody is just their own selves and they're all kind of wacky and a little bit strange. But
what are you trying to say?
Well, but nobody bats an eye and everybody's kind of accepted. It's kind of accepted that everybody's got their quirks. And that's kind of what makes it like just a fun, it's very inclusive. There's one person who has a problem with it, and that's my husband, my co-host, and he's the one who's kind of always grumpy about things or complains about things. He's the one that if bad things happen, they're happening to him, and then I'm kind of the foil on the show, you know. Okay. So I'm the one kind of saying, oh, you need to calm down and relax and just let things go. And so nothing really bad happens in Smilteton, although in Alberta today it is -40 with the wind chill. So we have to think of ways to keep smiling. The podcast is the way that we are doing that here in my household.
I absolutely love that. The alternate universe just like makes me, I'm smiling like crazy right now just thinking of that. I should come up with an alternate universe for my podcast. Like, I don't know what it would be, but that's awesome. I think I would want it to be like sunshine and beaches and like, tropical drinks. Because I'm in Chicagoland area and it is cold here, just like it's cold by you. I've been to Alberta and there's not much difference. So actually, I've been to Winnipeg. So I don't remember where Alberta is. And I remember the joke was they called it Winterpeg there.
Yes.
How far is that from Alberta? I don't remember.
So you do have to drive. Winnipeg is in Manitoba. That's 2 provinces over. Yeah. However, it's acknowledged in Canada. I think at least Albertans acknowledge that Winnipeg has us beat in the Winter Olympics. Let's just say.
Oh gosh! So we flew in there. It was late at night, and I remember I just remember like how cold it was, and I was just like, wow. And we went up into the tar sands. So we were up there because we were at that time we were manufacturing automotive, and a lot of our customers were, we built transmissions, and so we were going up there talking to the big companies up there that were drilling the soil and all that stuff, and it was pretty darn cold. But getting back to your podcast, so you do it with your husband. So what made you guys want to start your podcast?
So it actually has been kind of development for, let's say, since 2015. We have podcasts for back that far, but it's been really going solid for the last 2 years. And the reason that we started it originally was because my husband had a dream, which was to do music. Okay. And he was always thinking, well, I can't do it. And he can't because he's got a job and a family. So let's be honest. But we live in this, world of technology, and I sort of have this kind of fantasy land in my mind, probably for real. Like I do have this idea that we can do things, we can make things happen. And so I said, you got to put it out there in some way that it's free for us to put it out, or as close as possible to free, that will get across to people, that people can actually access it. It's not breaking any laws.
Right, exactly.
And we can actually get this music out there. And he resisted. And it's kind of actually probably our characters on the podcast are kind of like our characters in real life, except just more extreme on the podcast, because he resisted. I made him do it. And it's going amazing now. We have 3 songs on each show. I eventually, like about 2 years ago, when it really started for real is when I joined. Okay. So I started becoming a voice on the show. I also write stories for the show. So it's kind of like 3 songs, one in the beginning, middle, and end.
Okay.
And then in between we have, it's like a variety show. So we have storytelling. So we both will write different kinds of the stories. So
Okay.
I write stories that are about magic is happening, and Miss Elizabeth has a group of kind of like a Buffy's group of friends, if you know Buffy the
Sure.
Vampire
Yes.
Slayer.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I
So it's
remember.
kind of
I remember
we
Buffy.
solve supernatural mysteries together, and then Jason's stories are about other things like what's going on in the music world. But we have other segments that are like him giving his life tips, where it's kind of, it's totally silly. Like, it's not us telling people what to do. It's more saying, here's what Jason did and here's how it went wrong. And it's usually trying to be funny, you know.
I love that. So you guys, are you having fun with this together, or do you kind of like, do you ever, because I used to work with my husband like every single day, okay,
Mm-hmm.
and it wasn't always easy. So
Yeah.
is this like more of a good creative outlet for you too?
It absolutely is a great creative outlet. It's great for us to be able to work separately, but we definitely had to put in place strategies where we could work together
Sure.
and accomplish things on a schedule and be able to make sure that the show would always go on, even if, for example, one of us got sick, or
Sure.
if we had a fight and we weren't happy about recording that day, which is kind of like, it's only half a joke, right? Because, you know, if you're not in the mood to podcast, or your partner isn't in the mood to podcast, it just doesn't go well. It doesn't gel well.
No.
So we only do it when we're feeling great, but we don't let a show go. We haven't let a show go for months now, since the beginning of COVID. And we
Okay.
actually made a decision right at the start of COVID that we weren't going to stop, because a lot of podcasts were stopping or slowing down because of COVID. And we said, look, not to be big-headed about it, because we need the show as much as we think anybody else might need it. We
Sure.
need to do it too.
Yeah.
It's great for us to be together, to be working together. And when we work out comedy, then we feel happier
Yes, for sure.
together. And so we said, well, if it's good for us, and if we think it's good for the world, we should double it.
Yeah.
Instead of stopping or slowing, we should double it. And we must make it our mission to spread joy, because we knew even from the very beginning, and a lot of people noticed, because of the restrictions, people were going to be feeling depressed,
Oh,
you
for
know,
sure.
and feeling
Gosh.
trapped.
Yeah.
And providing a little bit of comedy that is not political, because everything was so political then. I mean, it still is, but it was so political, and ours doesn't have any politics in it that isn't just comedy politics. You know, it's just crazy people.
Yeah.
Which you could argue is also what is in real life. But so it's been good for us. It's taught us about ourselves and about each other. But it's also, you know, it works. It's just, almost like magic when you get together with your partner and you don't know exactly, we are scripted, but you don't know what exactly is going to happen.
Okay.
You get the kind of practice that kind of teaches you even more about each other. So it's been really, really good for us.
I love that. And so now, do you guys have a family? Do you have children?
We have 2 kids. They're 13 and 15. And
oh my God, teenagers.
yeah, we've hit that zone for sure.
What do they think? So I mean, if you want to talk more about your kids, that's great. But what do they think of mom and dad having a podcast? Because I would think that they'd think that's pretty cool.
I think they do think that it's all right. I don't think that they think it's anything too negative. The only negative about it is that it's work, and they do notice that we're doing the work. So we go into, we have set up a room. We have an area like our studio.
Yeah.
And Jason's got his music studio, and then we've got our podcasting studio, and I've got my office. So it's basically the downstairs area.
Teddy wants to make an appearance. Get down.
And so they kind of have to leave us alone when that's happening. So we do get interrupted, and we don't mind. You know, we let them know that we're recording. But it is funny sometimes, just odd little things will creep into the recording where they are coming downstairs or asking for something.
Like this one over here. Do you
Exactly.
see my dog? It's like he wants to be a part of it. So don't feel bad if they're popping in on yours, because he likes to make an appearance too.
Yeah, we have cats in ours occasionally. If we're recording video, the cat will jump up almost every time. So.
Oh, cool. Oh, I love it. Okay, so I'm gonna have to like go check that out even more. What is like one of the the best things that have come out of having the podcast?
I think in terms of how gratifying it's been, and we don't get feedback a lot because it's so hard to get actual feedback from people. But when we get feedback from people, it's so wonderfully validating because they tell us, oh yeah, I've been listening for this amount of time and it really helped me through this moment in my life, or something like that. And it's just like, we didn't know, like you can't know how you might be affecting other people. And hopefully it's always in a positive way. But the fact is, when you're doing this kind of communication like you are right now with podcasting, you don't know what kind of impact you're having on people. And it could be so important to that person that they start to feel like they have a connection with you and a relationship and they rely upon you, but also they're just getting something, some kind of relief or some kind of tip or some kind of guidance, that's helping. And the fact that you don't know kind of means that you're not responsible for it. So you almost can't take it too personally, but it just was so validating because of the amount of work it is. And sometimes how hard it is just to keep it going. If we don't sometimes get that little check mark, then it can be hard to see exactly what the point of it all is, right?
Yeah, you know what, I can relate to that. I mean, so I too kind of stayed on course with my podcast through COVID. I was still actually meeting quite a few people, and I was just getting guests, and it was just happening very naturally and organically. And I was like, okay, so I'm just gonna roll with this, But you don't always feel like recording. So I mean,
Exactly.
so I'll just be honest, today, because it's so cold, I get really tired. I'm in hibernation mode. I took a nap this afternoon. I woke up and I'm like, oh my God, I gotta get myself together. I have to have energy. I gotta look presentable. I was so tired, but once I got going and I started reading, rereading about you again, I was like, yay, I'm excited. So yeah. It's you even know, and I think this is probably a good just tip for anyone, with anything in life, even if you don't feel like it, just to show up for yourself makes you feel so good that it makes you realize that you can get through almost anything. So
exactly,
I can totally relate to that. So you already talked about why you combined music with comedy in your show. Where did the idea for Smilteton come from? Because I actually love that name. I love it. It makes me just smile saying it.
So Smilteton came about because we started telling stories about people, and we started to want to keep those people around. And they were specific characters, and they were going to be kind of like our buddies, that we're interacting with and have adventures with in a specific place. And I started to imagine, I do have a history with Buffy the Vampire Slayer personally. I have gone through that whole series. I enjoy Sunnydale. So Sunnydale is kind of already in my mind.
Okay.
And I live in a small-ish town, which is also just a nice place that nothing much, happens, but it's quite a nice place. And it's St. Albert, and it's right next to Edmonton. Yes. So Edmonton's kind of like the bigger center, and St. Albert is the smaller kind of bedroom community, if you will. And I kind of started to imagine this place as being like a happy town.
Okay.
Like a happy town that is sort of similar, like you could think of it as being similar to Sunnydale, but a little bit more happy, cartoony. And so we just thought, and we brainstormed a little bit, and I always just simplify. I think we thought of some more complicated names, and I just said, it's a place where you smile. It's the Smile Town. It's Smilteton.
I love it. You need to get some signs or something made up and have that behind you, because do you have that in your studio?
Not yet, but we are working on that. We're the Smile Syndicate. Like the band came first. The band name is called the Smile Syndicate. So that's another reason why I thought we need to put that smiling is our mission. It's in our band name. And so I thought, well, we need to have it as part of the town as well. So yeah, I'm working on a map. I've been working on that on and off for a while. It's harder than you think.
You are awesome. I just love this. I am blown away. I mean, such good vibes that you're putting out there. I mean, yes, 1,000 times yes.
We need a map of Smilteton, right?
Yes. Yeah, you definitely do. And you need to put like have that as a like piece of merchandise on a website
Exactly.
so people can buy it. I'll buy it because I want to put that up in my freaking office. If I'm having a bad day, I'm like, I'm going to Smilteton today.
I will email you just as soon as it's ready. I do sort of art. You can see sort of art in my background. I sort of have taken that on as a hobby a couple of years ago. Map making is a little bit different. It needs to look great. It needs to look happy, right? It needs to look happy, great. And I'm working on it. It'll come. And I'll email you as soon as it's ready.
Oh, perfect. Because I think that's amazing. What strategies, and I think this is great for other podcasters that are going to tune in and watch this episode. What strategies are you employing to keep delivering content every week? That's a really great question, actually.
Yeah. So if you want to be a podcaster, you must have a plan for this, because you will have moments where you're sick, you're in a fight, or you can't, or something happens. Or what if you just have a car problem, right? And you're just stranded, you don't make it. Or, if you're like me, sometimes you just have an emotion, right? And you can't do it, and you can't force yourself to do it. So you must have a plan, and we call it buffering. So we buffer. A lot of podcasters do this. You might do this too.
Yeah.
So it's where you record. If you have one show per week, then you record 8 shows, and like quickly, and you don't stop putting them out. So you have to record faster than you're putting out for a time. And then if you have a problem like we did, a year ago, my husband actually went to hospital with a very surprising heart condition that we didn't think that was a heart condition, but it turned out that it was. So surprise.
Very sorry to hear that. How's he doing now? Is he okay?
He's okay now. He actually had heart surgery, which is amazing. I'll tell you quickly what happened is that his heart was, I won't have the proper terminology, but he was having a ventricular, it was beating too fast at one of his ventricles.
Okay.
And what happens is that it's going too fast, and it starts, it's just not functioning correctly. Right. So you're not getting correct blood flow, and it was going 180 for hours at a time.
Holy cow.
And he was sometimes going over 200. So
is that AFib? Do they call that AFib, or no? Is that something different?
Fibrillation, it's right ventricular something fibrillation, something like that.
So my late husband, he had open heart surgery prior to him passing. I mean, it was just a domino effect of health issues. So I can relate to having to go through that with a spouse. It's very difficult. So I'm very sorry. And I'm glad that he's doing well. And I just remember, like, I mean, that's just such a hardcore issue to have, know? And then I don't know if they went through like the groin or whatever they did for your husband, but they cracked my husband open. Like they cracked him open, and it was hard to get him off the defibrillator. I mean, that was intense.
Yeah. So luckily it wasn't open heart for Jason. They did go through the groin, and they did go through the armpit at some point. They had multiple different things that they had to do. They were amazing. They used electrical, they used like a cauterizing solution. So solution, I mean, they solved it by cauterizing the nerves that were misfiring. Okay. So they went up and they touched the heart and burned off the nerves that weren't working, and he's completely better. But here's the thing, and I'm not recommending this, but if you do have a buffer, then you can go through heart surgery, and you don't.
There's the silver lining in that. There's the answer to the question, folks. Okay, make sure you have that buffer if you're a podcaster, because God forbid.
We actually did.
It's true, though. It's true.
We actually did. We recorded one show. So sometimes we'll do a show where it's like a half show, and we did one show where he was in the hospital, and we recorded it when he was actually in the hospital, because we had run through our entire buffer. But it was a decision that we made, that we committed to this. It was important to our lives. Like we made it that important, so that even if we were in hospital, it's like, if you're not dead, we have hope. And the podcast is a symbol of hope, is really how we're viewing it. So we wanted to keep it going. So we've made it through that surgery. We've made it through, I actually got COVID in October of last year, and that was a few weeks off because I was just completely exhausted by that. And the buffer is what really helps. The other thing is organization.
Yes.
So
Huge.
you need to have like, especially if you have a team, you need to have something like we use Trello. We use the free edition of Trello,
Okay.
and I strongly recommend it. And if anybody wants, they can write me and ask me. I will send them our like a blank copy of how we do our Trello, because it works amazing for us.
Yeah, could you send that to me? Because I would be interested in checking that out.
Absolutely, I will send that to you. So I'll just, for you, I will leave it with content, but for anybody else, I'll just strip out some content to just make it
Sure.
available.
Sure.
But it is for us, we have segments, and so we have segments that we can grab from the segment options. We duplicate them and then move them into place.
Okay.
And this is how we build our show. And we always have a plan, like we remember what came before. So
Sure.
we always provide a good a good variety that isn't repeating anything too quickly or leaving anything too long. So that the segments, like for example, we have Smilteton News. We have an AccuScope horoscope, which is the most accurate horoscope in the universe, we call it.
Okay.
And it's Jason gets like notions in his ears, and I accuse him of having an ear infection, and that's why he's hearing voices.
Oh,
And
that's cute.
that's where the horoscope comes from. So things like that. So having good organization, planning ahead, but also like recording ahead. And it can be up to, 8 or 10 shows, as much as you can do, really, really saves you, because you will get tired, and you will start to hate it. And so when that happens, you need to give yourself that time off, but you don't ever want to take like a week off for your audience. You want your audience to always have access to new you.
You're right. And I've so the beginning of this year, I haven't been as consistent, but now that I'm I'm getting more booked up with guests. But you're right. It is important to have that buffer. And I did for most of last year, I had a buffer. I released one once a week for the most part on the average.
Yeah.
But I would definitely agree with you. You have another question here that I really like. What themes are you exploring? Any themes in your comedy?
What themes are we exploring in the comedy? Right now, I told you that I'm not sure if I mentioned it though yet. We're dealing with the supernatural. So, okay, so you mentioned the tar sands. We have tar sands in Alberta,
Okay.
and we have tar pits right next to Smilteton. So we have this very happy place, but we have this place a little bit away from Smilteton where we have this bubbling goop. It's this.
Okay,
It's
so
a
real
tar
quick,
pit.
you know what it's like I'm picturing? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but it's reminding me of the Smurfs.
Yeah, it probably is. It's probably all of that, right? It's cartoony like that. So
I love it. Keep going. I'm sorry.
there's a tar pit. So, and then we have a police force, just to kind of make this make sense a little bit, that goes around in, they're not golf carts, but they're those go-karts, so we have like sand dunes, and then it turns into tar pits.
Okay.
So they drive around in these vehicles with little, cherries on the top of their vehicle, because they're police. People will come out to the tar pits, and they will race across them in hopes that they will not sink, but sometimes they do sink. So and it's like a thrill, it's like what teenagers like to do.
Sure.
So nobody ever dies, they get out, but there's a lot of property damage, as you can imagine.
Sure.
Well, nowadays, we have this other phenomenon coming out of the tar pit, which is that we're seeing tar pits, like black gungy handprints, all over the town. And we're having these people are seeing these figures that are like dripping with this tar. And they look like humanoid figures, but they're like almost like swamp monsters, you could imagine.
Right. Okay.
When they come close, people feel sad.
Yeah.
So if you go close to the tar pits, you start to get kind of like a sad feeling. And if you sleep out there, because Miss Elizabeth and her gang went out to kind of try to see what's happening, we fell asleep and we all had nightmares. So we're kind of dealing with this theme. It's just a cartoonish kind of an idea, but where's the bad coming from, and why is Smilteton so happy?
It's very relevant, though. I mean, you're just putting a different spin on it, and I think that it can be relatable, and you make it relatable in a very fun way. So I absolutely love it.
So we're fighting the frowns.
Fighting the frowns, yes. I was thinking, so I always think to myself, like, what is my title going to be for an episode? And I think I'm going to say, Welcome to Smilteton for the title for
Perfect.
this episode, because I just love it so much. But
Perfect.
Liz, thank you so much for being a guest. I think I'm going to start wrapping things up here, unless there's anything else you'd like to share.
No, I hope that we have a few more visitors to Smilteton. Everybody's welcome, and I'd love to know what people think.
Absolutely.
And
So why
thank you
don't you
so much
plug
for
your
having
links?
me.
Can you plug your links really quick where people can, and I will put those links in the description of the episode as well, but why don't you just let them know where they can find you and follow you and support you?
Sure, probably the easiest place to go to get everything is thesmilesyndicate.com. Everything is there. But if you want to join the community, which is also a good place to support, you can go to smilesyndicate.locals.com, or you can find us on Patreon, and we're just the Smile Syndicate there.
Very cool. And I will have all those links in the body of this episode. Again, Liz, thank you so much for being a guest on Label Free Podcast. To live your best life, you must live label free. This is your host, Deanna Kuempel. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share. And I will be back very soon with more dynamic guests.